Oh my god, another discussion video within a week. We're turning into a discussion channel, baby. You don't know what I'm talking about. Or what we're discussing, but you probably clicked on this because you saw it on the title. We're talking about the rune changes. If you don't know what the rune changes are, quickly to go over it. Basically, they're making it so instead of being skill check based, now whenever you stop doing a generator, as a survivor, the gens will stop progressing 1.5 2 at a 1.5 2% rate. So basically you leave it and it just regresses. Now, do I agree with the change? Yes and no. So let's quickly go over the yes. I think it's a good idea because what this makes is it leaves survivors with a choice, and I love those choice-based stuff. That's why I love the perk Make Your Choice as well, because survivors have to make a choice. You can either go and save someone, or you will get, but if you do, you will get exposed, or you can just leave them and let them die, but then you're gonna be one man down. Same with Devour Hope. I love those choice-based perks. And Ruin, it's gonna be the same thing. You can either leave a gen, and then, go get chased or save someone, but then you will lose all the progression you've made on that generator, or you can just sit on the gen and not help your team out. I love this because it also helps killers have pressure as well. However, when we come to the not liking side of things, there are multiple stuff there. One of them, which I've discussed this with a lot of people, and the reason I think, like I said, I like the idea, but I think the levels are a little too low. Because we'll get to the whole killer side of things anyways, but no survivor is gonna leave the gen for so long that the regression is gonna be unreturnable unless the killer is tryharding to a point that you need to leave the gen. But again, we'll come to that later. If you have Rune 3, it's gonna be 2% at most, which equals, if you 90% of the gen, it's gonna take 40 seconds to fully deplete this gen. Sure, it helps a lot, it's some regression, but I don't think any survivor is gonna leave a generator for 40 seconds, unless they're getting chased or all that stuff. But if they're in a survivor friends, they're gonna tell their friends anyways. It's weird. I think they should buff the rates just a little bit, not like 5%, because when I first said, I was like, maybe make it 3, 4, 5. That was my first thought, but then I went, that might be a little too much. At least make it like 1.52 and 3, or 2.53, or like 2, 3, 4, so that it's just a little more, because these points are a little 50-50 because we haven't seen it in action, and I'll go over it once the Ruin as it is comes out. Not as it is, but like the Ruin they're planning to release comes out, and then we'll test it, and then I can say if what I think remains correct, if they should buff it. But I think if it was a little higher, what it would mean would be the fact that you can either leave the gen, but by the time you come back, most likely that gen will be done, or you can just look for a totem which gives the killer some time while being balanced. This just kind of forces survivors to interact and make a choice, and it also gives the killer a little more time because survivors will be looking for a totem and cleansing it 15 seconds, looking for like a minute or so, and this just gives the killer some time. I think if they buff the rate like just a little bit, then I think it would help out killers a lot. And my second point is that, and I'm not looking at a survivor side right now, I'm looking at a more killer side. Ruin helped newbie killers, keep pressure. I've discussed this with game shooters in the Dead by Daylight server, and they said, yeah, but the way Ruin currently is, you don't need to do anything, and even bad killers gain pressure with doing nothing. But that's the thing, survivors gain a lot of pressure by just holding M1. So, Toolbox is, it's a passive for just having an item. I feel like it's the same with Ruin. You have it, and you just gain pressure from it. And it helped new killers a lot. And they said, their discussion was, hey, but wouldn't it be better if they actually had to try hard and, gain pressure instead of have a perk do it for them? But the thing is, new killers, have a lot of hard time downing survivors. Even if they're, a good killer, they're just getting into this game. So they're not as great in downing survivors and, retaining pressure. So they need some sort of perk to help them just pressure the game, just slow down survivors somewhat while they try and down them, and then the game doesn't go off super fast. 2, this is gonna make good killers be even more tryhardier, right? Okay, if you see, killers using Ruin in high ranks, it isn't because usually they don't think, oh, survivor's gonna miss skill checks. They usually use it so to counter great skill checks, to if they have like a baby survivor, they can gain some pressure from it. And not all the decent survivors are consistent in hitting great skill checks. So I personally use it so that I can put some pressure on bigger maps. Now, Scott John has talked about this, but the current map design is terrible for most killers who's not Billy or Nurse, who do not have a huge map pressure. Like if you're playing Bubba, you're gonna need some external help to retain those gens until you can make it there. And I like the changes, but then saying, hey, we're buffing this because a lot of killers use it, doesn't really make sense. Maybe you should identify why 80% of killers on rank 1 are using it, instead of going, oh, 80% are using, so we need to buff this. Maybe there's a reason there that I feel like the devs aren't looking at, and what most what most players say is the fact that gens go on too fast, which I disagree with. 80 seconds is plenty of time to down someone and then make it there, make it to a gen in a smaller map and pressure survivors off of it. If, all the maps were smaller, the new Ruin changes would be awesome, because, 80 seconds is plenty of time to down someone and then make it to a gen. But the thing is, 70% of the maps aren't, small or balanced in the way of how tiles might spawn. Not saying how they spawn, I'm saying might spawn. You might get like 3 fucking... you might get Cal 3 Shack and like a long wall in between in Thompson's house. And plus it's a huge map, so you will be wasting more than 80 seconds to get a person down or make it to the other side of the map unless you're playing Billy. So instead of, if you want to make this change behavior, talk about making maps smaller. Maps should be smaller if you want to go through with this change. The reason most players run Ruin isn't because gens go too fast, it's because the maps are so big that as most killers, they cannot make it to the other side of the map by then. So they have to use a perk, in this case Ruin, to slow that down just a little bit to give them, you know, just like a few more seconds, just a bit more pressure. And taking that away, unless you buff the rates just a little bit, I think Ruin is going to be useless and killers are going to... Not useless, but Ruin isn't going to be that great and killers are going to have nothing to pressure the map. And good killers, this is my second point, good killers are going to have to play super fucking tryhardy. Like, they're not going to be nice, you know? Usually, in my games, in analysis games, I'm a little more tryhardy, but in my normal games, you know, I won't proxy. If I see someone, I'll go to them, and then, I won't tunnel, I won't chase, blah, 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 those things, you know. I'll just be calm so that, you know, the game can go for long, and survivors can do stuff. Because I have Ruin, and I have enough pressure to slow down the game. But when I don't have Ruin, and enough to pressure and slow down the game, I'm gonna have to slug and, you know, proxy sometimes and lock down certain areas and pressure survivors off of hooks and gain pressure different ways than generators. And this is gonna be implementing a way of games that are not gonna go, you know, nice. I don't wanna, like, I'm not gonna be able to blame a killer for tunneling me off a hook to gain pressure off of me, because they have no other way of, you know, pressuring. Ruin is in there, and they have to find a way to get survivors off of gens, and that will be, you know, tunnel and slug. So this is gonna complement a way more toxic, as the community considered this, way more toxic way of playing the game for killers. And I don't, like, I just want the devs to see this. With the changes they go through, and not by making the map smaller, the game is just gonna go way shorter, in the way that good killers are just gonna fucking slug and tunnel just to gain some pressure. Not always tunnel, but just to gain pressure to get survivors off of gens. Then Ruin is gonna be somewhat useful. But on the other hand, new killers who already have a hard time downing people are usually not gonna slug. You know, like, they either don't know when to slug or, you know, to slug. They'll just pick up and hook, or they don't know how to pressure and get survivors off of gens. So Ruin is not gonna be helpful to new killers at all, and new killers are gonna have no way of having the game go long enough to pressure gens and, you know, get some points and learn the game. The games are literally gonna go on for 4 minutes, and then they're just gonna lose. And then that's just gonna make it so a lot of people are just gonna give up on killer. And then the queue times get worse. So, like I'm saying, I like the change and I like the idea, but the way, in the current state of the game, it's not gonna help out at all. It's just gonna make things worse. Sure, it's gonna make it so, you know, new survivors can hit skill checks and they aren't punished by the fact that they cannot hit great skill checks consistently. But it's just gonna make killers more tryhardy, and then it's just gonna get worse. So I think I like what you have here. That behavior, but if you want to go through with it, just hold on to it until you rework the maps. Hold on to it until you rework the maps, and then introduce this new Ruin with the new fucking map designs that you have, smaller maps. Then it's gonna be a more balanced, you know, gameplay, and you can go through with Ruin. And if you want to go through with it the next patch, you haven't designed your, you know, you haven't made maps smaller, buff the perk. I know your way of going with this is go safe. You know, play safe so that we don't get a lot of backlash. But the thing is, you have so much on your list of redesigning that you're gonna say, oh, let's go, you know, let's go safe with this. But then you're gonna focus on other things, and the rune is just gonna stay shitty for like a year, and then it's gonna be too late to buff it. You know what I mean? You know, make it balanced, and I think if you make the rates 2, 3, 4, it would be pretty balanced, because it would give good killers a reason not to tunnel and slug, because people are going for save, they're not doing gens, so then you can pressure survivors off of gens, and when you do that, by the time survivors get to it, the regression would have been massive and you gain a lot of time. And in bigger maps, it's not only the killers who suffer from the map being big, it's also the survivors, because then they will have two choices. Either, you know, stay on the gen until finish, then killers getting pressure because they have someone on the hook, let's say, or they have someone slugged and there's no one going for saves, and if there is, he's pressuring them, and if someone is doing gens, then, you know, it's so much pressure for the killer. And if you want to go for a save or a heal on the other side of the map, then that just helps the killer retain some sort of pressure. The way it is, it's just gonna take 40 seconds to just fully deplete a gen. And this might seem like, oh my god, it's 40 seconds, but I'm telling you from now, most maps, it's just gonna regress like 20%. Maybe not 10 seconds, but like, what, 40%, half of the gen, you know? No one is gonna leave a gen at 90%. You know, just punish them a little more, maybe? Just so that survivors get punished more in big maps, just like killers get punished. Just make it just a little bit more. Just maybe 2, 2.5, 3, 2, 3, 4. Anything in those lines, just a little bit more to help out killers in big maps. That's the only reason killers run Ruin. And this also ties into another problem with the dev blog that was just released. It felt like how they wrote, I discussed this with people on game discussion, but they all thought that they were buffing Doctor and nerfing Ruin for the wrong reasons. Their justifications were for Ruin, 80% of rank 1s use it, and it kind of makes it unbalanced for, you know, new players. But, you know, 80% of players on high ranks using it isn't a good justification. Like, it didn't feel like there was a lot of thought process going into it. You know what I mean? I feel like they just identified that they were using it, but they didn't identify why they were using it. So it just made it worse. And now it's just, people are like, what the fuck do you mean? And half of the community is already like, oh, gen times are already fucking worse. Why would you take the one thing that made gen times somewhat bearable? It's not the gen times, it's the length of the map. It's how big the maps are that makes the length of the gens too long. But then the thing is, if just people who say gen times are too short, stop. You're gonna cause even more stuff that are gonna cause imbalance. Let me tell you what happens if they buff, you know, the gen progression time. You know what's gonna happen? In long maps, sure, killers are gonna have a lot of time. But the thing is, in smaller maps, survivors are gonna have no fucking way of pushing through. They're gonna have no way of pushing through generators. Because it's gonna be super long, and it's gonna be plenty of time for killers to push through that. In smaller maps and in bigger maps, it will be enough. In shorter maps, it's just gonna be a help for survivors. Do not, just stop saying this. Just stop. It's gonna make it worse. Believe me, it's gonna make it worse. just redesign the maps and then go through with these changes is my suggestion to you. That's the only way you can fix this. I feel like Scott John is gonna make a video on this, and soon. If not, he already hasn't. This is like what, Australia time? It's 5:44, 7th of January. I'll watch it. I'll see if he's made a video. But I'm taking a guess here, but I feel like we have some points in common about the ruin changes. But you never know. I'm guessing this because I'm usually on the same side as Scott John. Our opinions are usually same, but you know. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the ruin change? And please stop saying, you know, nerfing ruin while gen times are, you know, too short is worse. You're just gonna cause even more trouble. Like, I was not arguing, but I was discussing with a person in a server, not Dead by Daylight official server. I was on the same team with this person. And funny enough, I actually argued like a shit ton with this person all the fucking time, before every single tournament game. All of my teammates and everyone who was involved in the team knows who I'm talking about, but we had a discussion about ruin, and he suggested that, oh, they should make it so ruin is like 20% more on generators. So what he's saying is, gens are already 80 seconds. So it's, he said 20 or 25%. I did my math on him saying 25%. If it's 25%, ruin adds passively 20 extra seconds to every single gen on the map. And some totem placements, especially on maps like Hawkins, most survivors cannot find them. So survivors have to deal with 100 seconds of gen time because of ruin. That's a buff. That's not a nerf, that's a buff. And it's not gonna help anyone. It's gonna make survivors even more, you know, salty. It's gonna make killers way more powerful because everyone is gonna, like, it's gonna go from 80% of rank 1s running a ruin to it's gonna be 100% of killers running ruin, just because of how dumb it's gonna be. Do not suggest this. It's a good idea, it's just not on the right time. And now I'm gonna discuss Doctor in like 5 minutes, because I usually record things like back to back. God fucking save my soul. I'm up to discussion about this, so what do you guys think about it? Do you guys think it's a good change, it's a bad change, there's room for, you know, improvement? Do you guys agree with this? Do you guys not agree with this? I'm open to discussion. But yeah, have a good day. And, you know, be careful out there.